Hello, everyone. Welcome to Osquery Office Hours. Here we are, late November, just about Thanksgiving for those of us in the U.S. And welcome. I only put an agenda doc up 10 minutes ago, so it's possible people have things they haven't had a chance to say. First section is announcements and highlights. I don't think I've got any. We'll get to that in down agenda.
Is it worth mentioning that we merged a BPF fix that was...
Nah, I was going to get to that in the 5.1 section.
Okay.
Okay, never mind. Probably biggest announcement is we merged a BPF fix. We'll probably cut a release for that.
Yeah, I was just crashing all the boxes.
Yeah, apparently it was a crashy thing. Next section is kind of an open section for any questions, issues, or PRs people want to discuss. So if anyone's come here with any questions, Roxana, welcome. New face, or I think mostly new face.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for all the help as well. I was during last week installing and reviewing. So I have been for some time. I didn't knew about this project. I have been looking for it for a while because I have been working on provenance. And so it's important to have all this information, of course, for doing some provenance. And I was wondering how can I use Osquery for maintain semantic data about what is happening on the events and activities in the machine. So yeah, interested on go deeper and see what is inside the database and how can I use it for my projects.
Oh, well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Feel free to ask questions. Now's a good time. So if you've got anything you want to ask us about, now's kind of an open section. Otherwise, this is super informal. So.
Yes, I just will begin to trying to set up configs for getting events associated with files in the file system. So I think that I saw in the documentation that this is the default. You have a config for maintaining queries on the certain directories in the file system. So I will try that. But if you have a short example, a very brief thing that I can test it quickly, I will be doing. And one thing that I will be interested on having very quickly to test it. One thing that I wanted to ask is, can it be a good way to work? I created a Docker file in which I install Osquery, and I was thinking to use it for creating events that is happening and reviewing the tables and the queries that the result of the query that I can do after these events. That after I have thrown this event. Is this a good way to do it, or is it better not to have it encapsulated in a Docker file and do it directly in the system?
I would generally say you would want to have Osquery running directly in the system. Docker can add some weird layers. If you were running on like a Kubernetes environment or in a very clear container-driven environment, you'd have to run the container with the root level permissions, and then it could have visibility into the overall system. I haven't done that, but I'm pretty sure some people do that. More common would be to run Osquery at the hypervisor level, so like whatever the host OS is, and then it will have visibility into the host OS to kind of whichever containers bubble it up, however they bubble it up. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, Sure. Perfect. Thank you. Great.
Welcome, Nick. If there are no other sort of general questions, we can move to our agenda. The one agenda item that I think we have is whether we want to make a 5.1 release. We had discussed needing to get a 5.1 release out because that would let us get the BPF fix out for people. And the only reason we would wait is if we thought that the M1 stuff was going to land really soon. Otherwise, we'll end up cutting a 5.2 release in roughly a month, 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So I think that's no big deal. Yeah, what do y'all want? You want to push out a BPF fix?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Okay, cut you a 5.1. I'm not going to have a chance to do a changelog for it, but we can certainly cut it and leave it in pre-release. And I think that's probably what most people would want to start playing with it. Does that sound right? I can probably make changelog later this. I don't know. I don't know when I can make changelog. I'm so sorry. Okay, so we'll cut out 5.1. I'll try and do it tonight. And I'll leave it in pre-release for a while.
All right. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
Probably not. Thank you. I guess I could. Maybe I'll cut a 5.1 if we end the meeting a few minutes early. It's easy enough. And I guess once it's cut, people will play with it as ever. So cool. Anyone want to say anything else about a 5.1 release? Cool. Apple M1 support. That is still a very big PR.
Yeah, so we need a strategy to review it. And
yeah,
all I can think of is decomposition, sort of taking a big task and decomposing it into conceptual smaller tasks.
Into either 400 smaller tasks or 37, depending on how you choose to look at it.
Yeah, or you could think of it as like, these are all just libraries being updated, and then it becomes one concept. But it depends on how closely you want to read each line.
I guess we had the review suggestions from Mike in the comment. I think that there are many files that can be mostly ignored, like all the config files or the generator files are really interesting.
Yeah, hundreds of these files are being generated, and then we're keeping the generated product in Git.
So to be honest, I feel like I need to at least skim them. So yes, I agree. I think the review is pretty light. And if these were split into libraries, it would be easy for me to figure out just how to be like, okay, cool, I can just eyeball this. Yep, these updates to generated file look reasonable. The thing that makes it hard is stepping through them one at a time, especially because if you end up needing to do any rebasing or pushing on it, it sort of destroys any visibility history I have. So we kind of need to like freeze it to review it because it's such a big moving target.
Yeah, and I was about to say that readmes are what can be reviewed. It is really interesting to review how libraries have been compiled. Because now we have a README for each library.
Nice.
Yeah, and then that's a self-documenting PR to review that part first.
Instead of READMEs, you should use make files.
Well, yeah, the README exists because there are manual steps and yeah, you can't really do that fully automated anyway. So
this sucks.
Yeah, no, you have to look into the library build system, the original library build system, and extract information every time. But yeah, we have really separated each library change in its own commit. So there is a commit for each library that has been changed, ported, updated. And even other kind of changes, they are all grouped by, let's say category. So we have fixed some tables, and there's a fix for each table that has been there's a commit for each table that has been fixed, or there are tests that had to be fixed, and that's the same. Changes for CMake, only like enabling the ability to cross compile and detect the architecture from the CMake option. That is again a separate commit. So I think you can really step commit by commit and look at those. And what you would see are, again, some changes, addition maybe to of a README, changes to the CMake list. There's only a few cases, like I think with Boost and AWS, where we had to do other changes outside of the library workspace, let's say. So that has, for Boost, we had to update some of the Osquery core code. So you might want to look there better into, but yeah, otherwise I think they are pretty well contained, each commit.
Roxana, so this is mostly a volunteer project, though many of us are paid by our employers to work on Osquery. So it's a little fuzzy. My employer indirectly pays me to work on Osquery. We ship an endpoint agent, which itself uses Osquery, and I can take some of my time to work on Osquery. A little roundabout. Other people may have other stories.
Okay, because it could be the same for me. I could need to ask for time from my company to dedicate some time to help in the project or be involved more in the project. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I mean, Osquery, the organization doesn't pay anyone directly, but we certainly have many folks in a position like Seth just said, where we work for someone who's got strategic interest in Osquery. And some of these folks here are from Trail of Bits, where they're a consulting company that is kind of paid directly by their clients to work on Osquery. But again, they're not. They contribute to Osquery and they're part of the Osquery organization, but they are not the Osquery organization.
Yeah, it's a little fuzzy, but you're looking at a chunk of the official Osquery organization. About half of it's here right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So it sounds like we should all try and review the M1 thing. I'm excited to see that land. I just am scared of that PR. And I don't know. Anyone have other things? Might be a pretty short meeting today.
Yeah, once that is merged, then we can look into the changes for the code signing workflow. I already made a pull request for it, but it may not be fully working.
Okay, so we want to probably merge the M1 stuff before we start. You're talking about the universal build stuff?
Yeah, so there were no changes on the Osquery packaging repository, but on the code signing workflow, I changed a couple of things.
I can try and review that pretty carefully. I'll probably wait till after we get 5.1 out the door.
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't strictly need to, because that's pinned by no, that isn't pinned by SHA. We just build off the head of code signing. So,
yeah, okay. Yeah. I also made a couple of changes in how it works, so that it will attempt now to detect which Osquery packaging version you should use based on the artifacts.
Okay.
But you can still override it if you want. There's a new parameter that you can input.
I'll read it. I'm sure it's reasonable. Reminds me, we did have an outstanding request to try and make consistent latest symlinks, which I don't think we built yet. So we could do that. And I know Charvel had some thoughts about whether the Osquery packaging should try and clean up the old version 4 stuff out of user local, but I don't think we did anything with that.
I don't think you can. So, well, okay, I know less about macros and packaging, but as far as I recall, you are normally, so you have to delete files manually using
you
maybe
could stick
using
that
the
into
manifest.
you could stick that into a pre-install script.
Oh, okay, you mean on the next install? Yeah.
Yeah, so the 5.1, like the thing.
Yeah.
So previously, every time you installed a new version, it would simply overwrite the old version, and this is probably what you want. When you install 5, because the paths changed, it didn't overwrite the old version, so the old version is still running, and that's probably not what people expect. So there was talk of, well, it's not real, it doesn't feel right, but the post-install or pre-install could just go and delete it. We'd never really settled on what we wanted, so we didn't do anything.
I mean, on that note, there is also an additional thing, which is if you, well, it's partially related in the sense if you still have an Osquery running where you are installing a new one, we want to try to detect that, and either stop the previous service or at least fail the installation, because currently this is the case. For instance, on Linux, where you can have an Osquery running, you install a new version, but in theory the process still running is the old Osquery until you actually restart the process. So
it's
annoying.
we like in a perfectly clean world, you would only care about the OS query that you thought you had done, right? So like, be it by path or by bundle ID or something, but we changed all of that. So there's a little bit of a weird like legacy transition. At least on macOS, we changed all of it. I think we fixed this. I'm sorry, I just don't have it all in front of me. Someone observed that we weren't putting symlinks into the right place on Linux. Did we fix that?
Not yet. It was missing the Osquery I. Or no, I'm sorry, the Osquery D. I think it was not in path.
Do we care? We probably care.
Yeah.
I think it's mostly a user experience thing. Most people that commented there were used to run the Osquery D binary directly, maybe with -s.
Okay, there we go. This was packaging issue 17. Yeah, okay. It wouldn't be wrong to drop symlinks. Okay, so we dropped symlinks into user local bin, which we did because that's how we used to ship it on macOS. On Linux, we've never shipped in user local. We ship in user bin, or we used to. We didn't put symlinks into user bin. Arguably, we should have. Okay, someone has a PR open for this. This might be a really easy one to review, so like if possible, it might be worth squeaking it into 5.1. Alessandro or Stefano, are either of you in a good place to absorb that? I am talking about
Which
that
one?
PR.
Yeah, we will take a look at it.
Okay, I'm happy to hold 5.1 like a day to get that in, because I think that will solve some people's problems.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, there are a couple of changes to be done, but yeah.
Are they easy? Like, do you want to squeak it in today?
Well, meaning if I correct it, I push it on the directly on the PR, I guess. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, I mean, we could go either way. We could cut 5.1 with the BPF fixes and then defer these to 5.2. But if you're like, just do it. I don't know. I kind of want to defer to you too.
No, I mean these changes. I think they are easy to do, so I can do them. Yeah. I mean it's in the same league as the Windows pack restoring, so Windows query packs restoring. So yeah.
Okay, I'll hang out on the 5.1 release until we do that then. That's probably everything I've got.
Oh yeah, I was about to ask. Someone commented on the PR 6904. I remember we had concern, but we didn't mention them in a pull request. As far as I remember, the problem there was that the query operators were too broad, and they could cause the watchdog to kill the worker.
What 6904?
Yeah, I've linked it in the document.
7259, I think.
Oh
Is
yeah,
this an
sorry.
already closed PR?
Yeah, sorry, it's
Oh.
the title that threw me off. Yeah, 7259.
Got it. Thank you. Okay.
So yeah, it's mostly about writing a response there to show what was the issue, so we can fix it and approve it.
I don't think we're going to get this one into 5.1.
Oh yeah, no, not for this release.
I'll put it into the 5.2 milestone, and we can aim to have it done in 5.2, because it looks mostly done.
Yeah. So this is the unified access log. Okay. Yeah. The two things I have noticed were the constraint are not always behaving as you would expect. And again, those constraints, maybe I've only detected a case which you could say, but why you want to do that? Like you were excluding a certain time range, or basically any time the constraint is trying to exclude certain range, then the constraint would not work like that, but would take only one of the two. So you're saying it has to be less than or greater than, but it would only take the greater than one and run with that constraint. That is only what I found by my limited tests, but I worry and wonder if there are other constraints that are not behaving as they should.
It's probably worth making sure that our code is good, or the code in the PR is good. If the underlying library behaves slightly nonsensically, I think that's maybe okay. I feel like most of the logging things, Osquery will let you shoot yourself in the foot if you run a select star from events or from ASL or from this table. I feel like we can't. So I'm less worried about that, and mostly just I think we got to make sure that our own constraint parsing is right.
Yeah. The second issue was exactly about that. I think I could categorize it like a nice to have, so maybe try to improve performance, but it's not blocking. Yeah, for the constraint, I am not sure if it is a limit of the macOS API unified access logger API, or yeah, if this is something we are doing wrong.
I would suggest that we try to move away from these tables where you can accidentally select star and lock up the whole thing, and instead treat it more like the files table where it's like no constraint means no results.
So while you can do that, there's still a foot gun. Like I'm totally in favor of enforcing some kind of constraint for something like that, or even just saying, you left off, you didn't give us any constraints, so we made up, you get logs for the last 10 minutes or the last hour, right? Or like, who knows?
Yeah,
But you
that would
can
work
always
for
pass
me.
some constraints that are like, give me everything that the system generated, right? And you're going to melt it.
Yes, but the difference between the default first thing a user would try breaks things versus like something else that's not the first thing the user would try, probably, or it's at least not the most obvious thing breaks things, I think is a pretty big difference as far as usability goes.
I'm on board with that. I'd be even on board for changing the existing tables.
I think that would be just fine, because I doubt that anyone's intentionally selecting star from any of these tables that would basically break the system.
You might want to do something like that on an events loop, because it wouldn't be
Yes.
as bad. On the other hand, that's a different table, so it doesn't matter.
Totally different on events tables with the events optimized flag, I think, where you would be getting only the new events.
Yeah, I would also suggest to do as initially suggested by Zach. So have require that the SQL query is written in a certain way, because otherwise you may not know that table has a default behavior and the data you receive is actually being limited, because how you report it beyond, the user would have to check the log maybe if we are reporting an information
sense.
there.
Yeah, so if you did a select star from logs and you only got like the last 10 lines, how would you even know there was more? That's a good thought.
So we're talking about adding a mandatory where clause.
Yeah.
All right.
On all of these heavy log tables, or one at a time.
I think the most consistent behavior would be return nothing and possibly emit a warning, or return an error if that's possible.
Well, that's a fun question. So one of the things I think we've never had a consistent response for in OS query is how to handle errors. So I get that I encounter this a lot building custom tables over in launcher land, but I think the problem is fundamentally the same, which is that if something in the table code wants to generate a non-fatal, non-protocol error, do you return that? Do you return no results and log something, or do you return like an error result? And what is an error result? And like for some of our tables, we return -1 as a sentinel value, and for other ones, we just return no rows. And this is like a fundamental thing I don't want to bring in, but I almost wish we just had like an underscore error column universally that something could just populate, but we don't. I think this is a common API question on like JSON APIs is, do you return errors in band or out of band?
Yeah, and then there's the whole, you use like -1, null values, empty values. But I think right now as long as you're able to return a row, we return it. And if errors that the user should care, let's say, happen, they are logged in the logs.
Well, so we get these times when like we can return partial rows because like we're stitching data together. So like you get a partial row from one place it's like if you fetch user information.
When you do a
we
join.
get, no,
you mean?
even within
Oh.
a single generate block, we've got these places where we hit multiple API endpoints. So you're like, you get data from one, you partially populate a row, and then you get an error on the other API. We sometimes return the row and log an error. So you're getting partial data. And then correlating errors with SQL queries is
Just to clarify, you mean when we are internally using other select all from, so basically doing other queries on other tables? No?
No, there's places we just hit two APIs. Like we'll do one API. So like a lot of the users tables, we'll use one API call to get the list of users, and then we'll get user details for every user using another API. So it's just straight up two OS APIs behind the table.
Yeah, but I would think that your interface is the whole table. So unless you're actually querying different table, as sometimes we do, I would say the errors that you receive are referred to the whole table, and it's not necessary maybe to know how it is internally implemented, to know that separation. Like what the user see is the table. So I would only
That's
maybe
true.
worry
I think
about. Yeah.
what I mean is there are places where I think we may return half data because I'm not sure we're consistent in whether we return a partially filled row or not based on which parts of which API. Like we're just not consistent because it's all like up to whoever wrote the table and what they were thinking on that day. So I don't think we have best standards here.
Should we track this? Is not emitting a row better in this specific case?
I don't feel like I have
broke him.
So the thing is I don't think there's a clearly correct answer. So I kind of don't want to have a ticket hanging out that isn't actionable.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Osquery does a lot of really weird and really cool things, and sometimes you just hit edge cases, and I don't even know where to document them meaningfully. It's like really understanding all of the edge cases of Osquery requires you dig into the code because there's just so much. So like, it's like every table has its own nuance, and 99% of the time you don't have to care. And then sometimes you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, but is it clear that only half of the data is there? Should we maybe introduce an additional column containing a specific state to describe the error? How did you notice that your data was only partially filled? Is it because you were correlating things, or was it self-evident?
I haven't seen this in reality. I just see it in the code.
Oh, I see. Right.
And I'd have to double check too. But I'm fairly certain there are places where we start populating a row based on results gotten, and then if subsequent fetches fail, we'll still push the row back even if we haven't filled it in. Because Osquery doesn't necessarily know, is this data there's all these questions of what is the semantic meaning of this. So it gets real weird. I don't know. It's kind of just side discussion, I guess. But I've often thought about the idea of whether we should have in-band error reporting and what that might look like. And
yeah, no, that is interesting. In my code, I tend not to emit the row if I get specific type of errors.
anyhow, sorry for the digression.
No, actually, it's something maybe we can document somewhere, the policy on whether we should emit partial rows and when.
I don't think there's a consistent answer, so I just want to be aware of it, and I don't know how to. I don't even know where to document it. Our docs are huge, so if you wanted to put a footnote in being like, sometimes you get a partial row, read the source code. Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah,
I think-
maybe even updating the examples we have for the extensions and show what a partial row could be.
I mean, you go too far down this. I could also point out that we are deeply inconsistent in our use of nulls versus empty strings.
Yeah, but why we can't then document what we want? Well, at least try to do and give a direction about that, so that we don't continue adding on the confusion. No, I mean, it is helpful, I think, for development and, well, even in general, to have an answer. Obviously, for the new code, and if we ever go revisiting the old stuff, a couple of cents, just a big, in my humble opinion. I don't know. Given that this is a security tool, one should probably try to provide every data it can, even if there are errors. But obviously, I mean, maybe I'm doing saying obvious things, but obviously, do not show data that you know it is incorrect. Like,
I agree.
there are
in
cases
theory.
where you
Sometimes
again,
you
this
want
is
the
obvious.
partial row, and sometimes you don't, and it depends on the table and what it's trying to do.
And value, but yeah, like, let's. So I'm too agreeing that we cannot have a specific choice, but even saying that no, we are not using a specific choice because it doesn't make sense, I think it is useful, because otherwise maybe someone thinks that, okay, any error, just to simplify my life, any error, I will report -1 in the column or an empty value. And I think stating that we actually really want to be more detailed in that is helpful. And that, yeah, you can have cases where even simply maybe -1 is a valid value for that column.
Yeah,
So
we're super inconsistent. The -1 stuff
Yeah.
shows up in a lot of the WMI places. We use -1 as a sentinel, which is super confusing the first time you encounter it.
Yeah.
You're probably right. Like, it would be reasonable. Maybe we even have some docs about like notes for developers and table authors, right? And we can at least just be like, these are some thorny questions. Leave it at that.
On that note, I think it would be useful to point at a couple of table implementations to use as source of inspiration when writing new functionalities, as we have seen in the past that some new tables were based on really old code, and then they have to be refactored.
Seems reasonable too.
Oh, we discovered something weird, Stefan and I. The artifacts we upload contain both the Osquery I and Osquery D binaries. So we lose the symlink somewhere in there. Is it fine if we just delete one? Like, I don't think we need both of them.
I agree, but I wonder where they're coming from.
Yeah, I haven't debugged. Not yet.
I think, yeah, I don't know, probably with the transition to the new packaging systems, symlink creation has been transformed just to a copy of Osquery D into Osquery I. Well, there is a case still for Windows where you could create symlink, but it's messy to do that through the MSI to have the Osquery I as a symlink to Osquery D. So in that specific case, I think we are duplicating the binary, but yeah, that's the only case. Otherwise, on POSIX platforms, you can do that.
I guess where would you add this removal? Like somewhere in the CMake packaging code?
So, okay, to be fair, I've only seen it right now inside the package data we create. So that should be in the install directives we have on the Osquery side. I haven't checked what's the content actually in the packages. So yeah, I will.
Okay, if
We
you,
can
I
double
think
check there, but yeah.
the only thing I wouldn't want to do is leave both of them as binaries in a package and then like fix it in a post RM. Like that would be
Yeah,
ridiculous.
No,
Anything
exactly.
in
I don't
a
want.
packaging seems fine.
Yeah, the idea in general was just to if they are ending up also in the packages to reduce their size. So
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another random question about artifacts, but is there any way to make them accessible by logged out users? Because every time we have to send one artifact to like a customer or like any user wants to download them, it's an issue.
When we put them on, when they, do you remember for releases? Sorry, I'm pulling up an incognito window. Osquery, I think releases are accessible to not logged in users, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
releases are. And you're saying that artifacts, CI artifacts may not be?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was something similar actually on the old Azure DevOps. You also had to install an CLI, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, you're right. I can see them, but I can't download them. Um,
Yeah, I don't know if there's a magic box we can check to make them. Thank you, Nick.
Too
I
slow.
don't think there's a magic box. I haven't seen a lot of configurability here. I think our choices are kind of either roll with it or shove them into S3.
That's what I was going to say. It wouldn't be hard to shove them into S3.
I don't want to add to the huge traffic.
It wouldn't add that much traffic because these don't see a lot of download use. I'm sort of pondering more, how do we manage that? How do we clean them up regularly? Is there an attack route that I have to think about? Probably not. But it is the sort of just like, how often is this a problem?
Oh, pretty much every time we merge something, we want to provide binaries, and then we have to download them and upload them on Slack channels.
Some things
and then
you
they
could do.
have to, like, I wouldn't know how to make them, to allow them to check that they were not tampered with once uploaded.
And the people you are providing them to do not themselves have GitHub accounts?
Sometimes they seem they do, but they don't like to use them, apparently. I don't know. But I mean, it's not just, something that would be nice to have, but I mean, it's not that important.
Are you looking to provide people things from PRs or from master after PRs merge?
Ideally both, but even master is fine.
Because there's kind of always been an interest in thinking about how to put up nightly builds somewhere, which would look like every time we merge to master, that build goes somewhere accessible. So I'm more interested in seeing that than I am in like plumbing a lot of how to make PR builds accessible and cleaned up, and like how to duplicate GitHub. It just feels like we're duplicating GitHub infrastructure to get around, a logged in requirement. That feels
to get around GitHub infrastructure.
Yeah, like I'd rather think about, well, how do we make nightly builds available, right? Like,
yeah, that'd be really interesting to have.
Yeah, I mean, they could be released on GitHub with the pre-release tag.
I would shove those ones in test3 directly and just be like, look, here's a magic directory. doing things like automatically making or updating releases gets weird because releases are meant to be immutable. So you can't just have like a floating latest kind of thing. So you'd have to like remove a tag and then retag or something. It'd just get weird. I don't know if that made sense. But they're not meant to behave that way. And I don't think, I keep wanting the GitHub package server stuff to like be amazing, and it keeps feeling not amazing. That's like the full GitHub experience is to have your GitHub actions upload into the GitHub packaging system, if anyone actually uses it.
So anyone know if there's a way to like query what file paths are configured for FIM?
We can't get the raw config, right?
Or just a way to get the raw config?
I seem to recall that we have a config table, but I don't recall.
There is an Osquery flags table, but as far as I know, it only exposes things that are declared as either an option or a flag, which would exclude things like decorators or file paths. Okay.
It would be useful to have it, however.
I think it would be useful. I want to say, can we just expose the whole config? But I wonder if anyone sticks credentials in there. So like the Yara URLs may have credentials in them or something. So I feel like there's a little bit of a, what would we expose? Maybe we could just exposing the FIM config seems totally safe. So I don't know how to work through that.
Hard to say with any certainty on that.
So there is no API for that, at least in C++, but I know that if we just send a config plugin request, it will return the configuration with one object per source. And it should work with extensions. Like, I don't know if it is intended or not, but it works.
Anyone know why there's both a disable carver flag and a carver disable function flag?
Are they different?
I think both need to be turned on for carving to work, but I'm just from a UX perspective, like wondering.
I meant, did you go and read their implementations to understand what they do?
No, I didn't. Okay. I was just hoping someone might have some idea.
I can think of two people who might, and one of them is asking this question.
Yeah. I feel like I heard an explanation long ago about there being a difference between them, and like they are, I'm looking now, like they do different things in the code, but effectively they both prevent carves from working.
So I don't know. I haven't read the code. Would one of them like allow you to access existing carves, and the other one would like let you set new carves? I agree. The UX is terrible. I'm behind you 100%.
Would anyone object to like unifying this behind a single flag?
I would have to understand what they're doing before I answered that.
Similarly, like there's oh no, I guess that makes more sense. There's disable events and then there's enable file events.
Yeah, like another thing we could do is get a flags library that supports enable instead of disable equals false.
And then double the number of flags that Osquery supports. Sounds fun.
I would accept doubling the number of flags to have reasonable Boolean semantics. Yes.
Sorry, what was the name
Okay.
of the second one? The function one? Disable?
Carver disable function.
Oh, it starts with carver. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, it doesn't start
There
with
was a-
disable. It's a fancy one.
Sure, it's not like disable carver disable or carver disable function disable.
Ah. And by default it's true. Well, okay, now yeah, makes sense, I guess.
So you have to say Carver disable function equals false and disable Carver equals false.
On that joyous note, I have a meeting in 2 minutes.
I also have to go.
So
Yeah, I also do.
I'm going to suggest we end it on this wonderful redundant note.
Can you rephrase that as a double negative?
Continue meeting equals false. What wonderful to see everyone. Those of you in America, please have a happy Thanksgiving. And everyone else, have a great week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.